today we have Danny, Zara and Brooke. Welcome to Have Mum Have Baby, the virtual meetup. Thank you so much. So you're all very busy women. Not only are you mums, but we have a GP. Zara, you're a GP.
I am.
Just in case you didn't know. Brooke, you're a gynae doctor, doctor.
Yeah.
And Danny, there we go, the right technology, like the right technological term. And Danny, you work at Pandas Foundation.
Yes.
And I wanted to bring us all together today to talk about something that I actually didn't even know was a thing. Even after my second, I didn't know was a thing. And that's the fourth trimester. I don't know whether that is just something that's been like the phrase that's been coined recently, or if that's an actual thing that's been existing all along. Have we just realized that this 3-month period after birth is actually quite tricky in itself? So let's give it a title and then we can work on it? Or is it, have I just been living in a, like, I don't know, living under a rock or something for a while?
I mean, I feel like I'm in a position where I've got the doctor hat and I've got the mum hat. Yeah. And honestly, as the doctor, as a GP, it's not really a term that we would generally talk to our patients about.
Really?
And until I had a child, it's not something I was proactively discussing with people. Now I can't stop telling people, but honestly, it probably is something that's becoming more kind of au fait within communities. But I don't think it's something that doctors are particularly good at talking about.
Mm. Brooke, what can you tell us what exactly is the fourth trimester?
I mean, I would totally echo what Sarah just said, that it is, as a terminology, it's probably more come about recently, but we know kind of physiologically there are changes, important changes for both mum and baby that happen after birth and that continue after birth, so that pregnancy is not just that time it takes to grow give birth to your baby. The changes kind of stay with you for a while, and your recovery takes longer than just that kind of first few days. And so I think, it's like you said, it's probably the term itself has been coined more recently, and isn't necessarily a medical term, although I think you're finding more and more doctors knowing about that term. But generally it's referring either to changes for the mother or for the baby. So from mum's point of view, the fourth trimester involves changes in your mood, changes, so physical changes like the bleeding that you experience, the pain that you experience, just a whole host of different symptoms that last for about kind of 12 to 16 weeks. So that's why it's kind of termed still a trimester. And even beyond that, the changes of pregnancy don't go away after the fourth trimester. You know, for example, the risks of having postnatal depression stay with you for a year. It would still be postnatal depression up to a year after the birth of your baby. So it's so important that we think not just about pregnancy as those kind of 9 months of growing the baby, or 10 months it actually is, but think long after that.
Well, I don't know about anyone else, but literally when I was pregnant with my first, all I thought about was growing the human and then getting it out. And then maybe what pram, where it was going to sleep, but not the actual bit that's actually quite important, and that's taking your baby home. And Danny, that can be really as an overwhelming thing. I can remember leaving the hospital and kind of going, are they going to let me leave now with this human?
Yeah, definitely. It's looking at that human being in front of you thinking, I'm responsible for this and I've got to take care of this. And there's so much pressure on parents these days as well to do it a specific way or to look a specific way. All them pressures, and then to actually look after a child. Nobody tells you the good things about having a child. Everything's negative. You get sleep, you don't get any sleep, they're crying all the time, all you've got to do is change nappies, and it's poo and it's wee. And actually, you know, it's having the bonding, and by having that bonding and having that ability to care for this child actually makes the rest of it that little bit easier. And definitely nobody tells you the bits afterwards apart from the horror stories.
Well, but that's the thing. For me, I don't think I did know the horror stories. I think my narrative of motherhood was it's amazing. Because whenever you see anyone on TV, there's the time that they have to talk, or in magazines, is they don't have time to really delve into it and give a balanced overview. So they literally have to say it's amazing. So it kind of gets glossed over. Yeah. And then when you're in it and all of a sudden I can't go for a wee or a poo without holding myself together. Like all these, whoa, boob, like milk comes out of boobs. How many holes do I have? You know, it's all these things you're like, we actually don't, but it's huge things. And then you kind of feel like, oh, how am I meant to feel about this? But I've still got to care for a little human. So it's interesting that you're saying that we know too much. And I'm kind of feel like I didn't know anything.
I think there's so much focus also on the baby, all the things that we get told about and that you've got to prepare about is everything is to do with the baby. And really a lot of people get shocked that you do feel all of those things that you say, that your symptoms go on and that you're kind of just supposed to get up and then take care of this human and just forget about yourself, when during your pregnancy you have all these checks all the time and you have scans and you have midwives and you have people calling you, and then there's suddenly not that much. And it's not really okay to talk about how you're feeling or what your symptoms are. No one really asks, apart from the first few days, you know, if you're in pain or if you're leaking urine, all those kind of things. It's left to you to bring up, and you don't necessarily know what's normal and what's not. Well,
because also you don't want to say, I'm not dealing with this well, because you, like in my head, I literally thought the health visitor was someone who was going to check that I was doing a good job. And if I wasn't, she was going to take my baby away. Like that's literally how I felt. And I can remember the first day, so the first visit that she made her first visit, and I was trying to feed. Milk was everywhere. He'd done an explosive poo. There was poo up his bum. I'd been told, I've read in all the books, don't give them proper baths for the first month because of the, you know, the oil in their skin and stuff. You don't want to dry them out. So and then the buzzer went, and I was like, oh my gosh, like what do I do? I can't wipe this much. Like what do I do? And then I just thought, she's literally going to see how inept I am at this. And she came in and she just looks at me and went, okay, let's run a bath. And it was having that kind of just knowing that I can do that. I'm allowed. This is my human. And sometimes we read so many books that tell us you should do this, you should do this, that our instincts then disappear because we're trying to get it right all the time rather than experiencing it.
But I think even though like there always is prescriptive things about what you should and shouldn't do, I don't think I was ever told about the fact that I won't be able to put my baby down for like 3 months. And I think that was really odd because I did all the kind of NCT or you know, various different antenatal classes. I did them on Zoom because I had my baby during lockdown. But I did all of those things. I'm a GP. I know the kind of medical side of things. But at no point did I think I won't be able to put my baby down. And no one ever told me that. Why did no one tell me?
I have to say, medical school does not, people often think like, oh, well, it must be easy for you. You're a doctor, you're a GP, you do obstetrics, you deal with babies every day. This stuff does not come up in our lectures. There are no lectures in medical school exactly about that. So I think it's so helpful to discuss the fourth trimester because, yeah, I think even when you're at an antenatal class, the focus is so often about the birth experience, but obviously you deal with the bits afterwards for a lot longer.
Well, I guess as well, in working in the fields that you do, is there that added pressure that you should be able to just get on with it and know what's happening and not be able to kind of go, oh, I'm struggling with this bit, I actually don't know what I'm doing, or asking for help?
Personally, I had that. I'm a district nurse by background, and there was a couple of comments of, you're a nurse, you should know better. So yeah, so I think it can do, but I think it very much varies on the person that you're dealing with in front of you. There's a very different era of people who were trained to maybe now, and I think the newer kind of professionals coming through are a lot more open and a lot more easier to talk to, and probably don't put that on you, because at the end of the day, motherhood is motherhood, and everybody's situation is different regardless, you know. And if even to the point of, if something happens to my child in the first 3 months, you're panicking and ringing the phone for the doctor or an ambulance, and you know, all the things of the panic. So my nursing head went straight out of the window, and straight away I'm like, oh, I need an ambulance, there's something happening. And then actually, if I'd have put my nurse head on, it'd have been absolutely fine. So yeah, I don't think it matters what your background is.
Yeah, that's true. Brooke, did you find that?
I mean, I always tell the story that, like, I'm kind of an obstetrician, but I failed to diagnose myself in labor. I went into hospital 3 times and got sent home when I was having early contractions, thinking I'd stayed at home as long as I could. I was going to be dilated, and I was like 1 to 2 centimeters and got sent home 3 times. And it's because, you know, until you go through contractions, until you feel what fetal movements feel like, you don't know. And I think, yeah, there is this definite misconception that you should kind of know more if you've got more of a medical background, but we now don't take any risk. My husband's a doctor as well, so together we kind of have this kind of policy of never really diagnosing ourselves. We always ask for external opinions. If something happens to either of the kids, a fever, whatever, I'm probably first to the doctor, like, earlier than any parent without a medical background, because I'm like, I don't want to, like, underdiagnose. So yeah, I think we're probably at the other extreme.
Well, because that's the thing. I do think we have a tendency, whether that's as women or mothers, to kind of go, I'll be okay. Let's just brush this under the carpet. It's fine. We'll get through it. And actually, it's difficult to ask for help and say, I don't know what I'm doing.
I ended up giving birth in my own bath at home, which wasn't the plan. But that was because I just kept thinking, well, no, I've seen women in labour. I know how bad it should be. I can't be in labour at this point. Not that it wasn't bad, but, you know, I just kept thinking, oh no, you're over diagnosing this, Zara. That was just a twinge. That wasn't a contraction. And it just meant that I had no midwives or anyone at home with me when I ended up giving birth, because I just kept thinking, no, don't be that person. You don't want to be the doctor that gets it wrong. And I think it was just
you did. But I love the fact you two are opposite ends of the scale. Brooke's in 3 times, and you're like, I'm not going in. Not yet. Oh, there's a baby.
I mean, genuinely, it was that. I was like, Rupert, what's coming out of me now? And I was like, it's a head.
Oh my gosh. So let's talk about that first chunk. For me, the first 3 days are very different as well. To I think it happens in stages, and day 3 is, well, even the lead up to it. But I can remember day 3, not only my milk coming in and feeling like I had the worst boob job in history, because every single part that could be full was. But also, I went into this weird state, and I phoned my doctor because I think I was exhausted. But I remember being curled up in bed, and in my head, I was Buzz, as like in my like fetal. Like, it was really weird where my mind took me, and I literally felt like I was away for quite some time. But day 3 is known to be a bit horrible.
I would say that day 3 is definitely a big kind of marker. Day 3 to day 5, like you said, is the time when you generally milk comes in, and that means that you go from kind of having the early colostrum, your milk transitions over to the one that's more watery and looks more like milk, but you need a lot more volume of that to give enough nutrients to your baby. So you kind of get your body massively overproduces because it doesn't know how much to make. So day 3 to day 5, you get really engorged breasts, but also you have the hormonal drop from after birth, and your estrogen and progesterone levels start to drop. And with that is the mood disturbances. It's like a very extreme form of PMS. And then by day 3, you've also, exhausted, and that kind of adrenaline euphoria of after birth, or mainly adrenaline from however the birth has gone, has subsided a little bit, and actually you're on day 3 of no sleep, and you've got all these hormonal changes and the milk. And yeah, I think day 3 is a really big turning point for a lot of people, and it's why I think if you're at home, it's a really important time to take as little pressure as possible, as little visitors as possible, just to try to give yourself the space that if you need to cry, you can cry. If you need to talk, you can talk. If you've got to sit there with your legs open because you're still so uncomfortable, all of that is fine, and that you don't have too many people around you.
Because it can become that thing of everyone's over. You want to show them your baby. This is the first time that they're seeing you as a mum. You want to be Wonder Mum. This is what you were born to do. It's like you're presenting that whole period when everyone's over, and when everyone's gone, I personally felt myself just sink. That feeling of, this is so overwhelming and all consuming, and not at all what I thought it was going to be like. But you find yourself, whoever walks in the door, I found I'd never wanted to show them what I was really feeling, because I wanted to be getting it right.
I think that's where I really weirdly found the benefit of lockdown, because I had a child and no one was allowed to come visit me. And I know obviously there were quite a few negatives about it, but there was that one positive, because you didn't have to tell people, no, I'm not ready yet. That you had that time, you had that space, and it was kind of by law that you were given that space. And I think it would be quite nice to be able to tell people that actually they can say no. They can say no to visitors. You don't have to have everyone come over, and you're allowed to have that space.
And even then, if people do come over, get them to make the blooming tea. I mean, how many people come over when you've just pushed a baby out your fanny or gone through major surgery and expect you to go and get the tea and biscuits?
Yeah. Yeah, you're still the host, aren't you, at that point? And I think that's the hardest thing when it comes to your friends and family. So a lot of my friends and family are come in and they make themselves the brew, and they do that anyway, even without the kids. So yeah, it's very much, because for me, for the first two children, I have no recollection of the first few months anyway, due to my own experiences of severe postnatal depression. So I think it's really hard for me, because I wanted everybody there. I wanted everybody to take over, because I couldn't look after this child and I couldn't hold this child. I wanted to put her down all the time because I didn't know what to do. So I think it's that happy medium, isn't it, of saying, it's okay to say no, but it's also okay to say that I'm not okay and I need somebody to come and have that support with you. And it's having that balance.
Yeah, because that's an interesting thing, isn't it? You could not have everyone around and use that actually as a way to hide how you're really feeling. You need someone almost, I think, to kind of be there and kind of prod you a little bit, which reminds me of something that I did years ago when I was filming. I met this mum who said that when her health visitor came over, she said that she kept asking the questions about her mental health, kept asking. And the woman said, it's like she wanted me to tell her that I wasn't coping, that I was struggling. And I kind of came away from that. I was like, but if she didn't, like that, surely that's better that we're overcautious, because we all know that we can put on a facade and act like we're okay and then crumble when people leave. It is more common than we know, really.
Yeah, I think a phrase that kind of is coined recently is pulling up the drawbridge, which is sort of what we were talking about with the lockdown. And I think that it's amazing if you can pull up the drawbridge after the baby arrives and have, very few visitors. But like you said, I think there is a caveat, which I would say is pull up the drawbridge, put no pressure on yourself, but only have the people around who support you. Don't do it for anyone else's benefit. Do it because, not your great uncle who you can't breastfeed in front of, you're going to have to hide under a muslin and whatever. You want to have the people around, your mum, your sister, whoever will say to you, you're not okay, you stay there, keep your legs up, we'll serve you, we'll get the shopping in, or whatever else. Difficult in the time of lockdown, if you can't have those people, you can't. But I totally agree. We know that we can improve people's experiences of breastfeeding, reduce the effects of kind of postnatal depression by supporting mums. And support comes in lots of different forms. And what's right for one person isn't right for another. I think pressure is bad, but support is good. And if you feel that there are people that you need to have around you to offer that support, that's great, whether it's by phone, whether it's by Zoom or in person. But pressure is what, having those people in your space can put that pressure on. Pressure to look like you've got it all under control. Your house is tidy, your fridge is fully stocked. So yeah, I think the right visitors is important.
Yeah.
I think it works quite well to get your partners to understand about postnatal depression as well. So before it all kind of happened, I told my husband about, look, these are the symptoms. This is what I'd like you to look out for. This is what you need to be, looking for, because you're with me the whole time. And I know obviously partners can also suffer with postnatal depression. So it's the same back and forth. But I think as long as you kind of look out for each other as well, it's nice if you aren't able to have visitors. It's nice that at least you've got your own kind of little group to look out for each other with.
And that's amazing, because that's something we really need to promote, and that's something that we as Pandas do, because my first child was 11 years ago and I had no antenatal classes, no nothing. So actually I knew nothing of the birth, I knew nothing of after the birth, I knew nothing about postnatal depression. And then fast forward to my third daughter who's just turned 3, and it's such a different world, and I think we are getting there. And I think this, you know, being able to explain, but also the professionals being able to touch on it as well when you come into an environment like a midwife or a health visitor who can actually openly talk about it, because I think it was so taboo back there. We've come such a long way, so it is really important to be able to say to anybody, all your friends who, you know, who are going to be able to support you, to say these are actually the symptoms and this is what we need to look out for. And it was only with my second and third that I was able to do that, because I'd already been through it with the first.
Talking about signs and symptoms, I can remember being on doing some TV with a male doctor, and he said about, you know, if a woman comes into my surgery after giving birth and she's not taking care of herself, she's not put makeup on, then that's bell ringing. And I was like, dude, that's me every day. Like, just because she didn't find a little bit of lippy on for you doesn't mean she's got postnatal depression. That means she's relaxed. But what are those signs and symptoms that we really do need to be looking out for, either for ourselves and for other people?
For me, from what we look out for as a support service, is it is being unkempt, but it's being unkempt in a very different way. So when was the last time you had a shower? For some people it can be a week to 2 weeks because they've not got the energy or the motivation to have it. So that's the kind of unkempt. Putting a bit of lippy on, I'll be honest, who does after having a baby? Who has the hair scrumped up in a bun, or who has it down an eye, you know, and straightened? It's the continuous low mood. So, you know, baby blues is something that's you know, that it does hit between 3 and 5 days, and it is that hormonal change. But if it persists for like 2-3 weeks and you're constantly feeling low and you've got no kind of happiness with anything that's around you, then that's a huge symptom. Crying is very common, especially when you're sleep deprived, but again, it's that continuous crying where you just can't stop for quite a long period of time. There's a lack of bond sometimes. It's not always the case, but sometimes a lack of bond with the baby. So, you know, for me personally, I wanted to hand my baby to everybody. I stopped breastfeeding because I physically couldn't handle holding her and being with her, so I would give the bottle to whoever fancied feeding her, because that's the first thing they want to do. Oh, we'll feed the baby. And that was prolonged for a few months where I had no bond with her at all. I couldn't look at her, I couldn't hold her. So it's having that attachment. And when you're seeing somebody, it's looking for that interaction and that response to anything that they may be doing. So if they're giggling or googling or whatever the signs are to them, it's that, you know, I can't say the word, so I'm not going to, but that reciprocity of being able to do that back. But if you've got somebody who's blank and continually ignoring the baby, whether it's crying, whether it's laughing, and continually talking with a cup of tea, then there's obviously a link there that they may not be bonding with their baby. And that really for us is all we look out for, because there's lots of other signs and symptoms medically, but I think for somebody who's a friend or a family member, they're the kind of things you're going to be looking out for.
It's interesting as well, because I think being away from my first now, like, so Buzz is 6, I recently read Laura Dockrell's What Have I Done? An amazing book. And I think reading that, I think no matter where you are on the scale of postnatal depression, or I think literally becoming a mum and reading that book, it's like saying to yourself, it's the ultimate, it's okay, and forgive yourself, because it's not you are not you in those moments. You kind of disappear. So I think it's so like, even if you've not given birth this year or about to give birth, I think it's an important thing to talk about anyway, because we understand ourselves so much more in hindsight.
Yeah, I think it's big because one of the things that that I always say to a lot of our people that come through our services is, it's not you talking, it's the illness. And the illness is what's making you do these things. It's not making you a bad parent. It's not making you somebody else is kind of in your mind at that time and making them decisions for you. And if we were to take that illness away, actually you'd be very different as a mother. And, you know, this can go for people who have wanted children for years and years and gone through all sorts. And all of a sudden they're told, well, you've got a child now. That's all you've ever wanted. It doesn't take away the fact that hormones and the way that your body reacts to that can cause the postnatal depression. So yeah, it's very much a case of it is the illness and it is not you, and you're not a bad parent for whatever reason that you are thinking it, because you'll have negative thoughts sometimes around you. I'm not good enough, what can I do? And you know, thoughts of harming, it doesn't mean to say you're going to do them, they are just thoughts. And actually, when it comes to a lot of postnatal illnesses, there's only a couple that we would really worry about that you would actually harm your child. 90% of the time they are just thoughts and they're not something you will act upon. So yeah, it's very much, it's the illness. I hated my daughter. I thought she'd ruined my life. I didn't want anything to do with her, and the thought now of thinking that, it devastates me. But it was an illness, it wasn't me.
Did you find it easy to ask for help?
With my first, I actually didn't ask for help. I had an amazing midwife and health visitor, and my midwife on the fourth day came out, asked me in front of my husband, "Oh, how are you feeling?" And I did the usual, "I'm okay, I'm fine." She rolled her eyes at my husband and went, "Okay." The very next day, the health visitor came out when she was on the phone to the GP. She'd done the Edinburgh score and everything had been completed, and I was on my way to therapy and onto medication and things like that. So for that, I didn't have to. With my second, because I'd already got involved in a lot of services because I'd moved area and there wasn't that support, I was very active and asking for help because I was understood of how low I'd got the first time, and that I didn't want that to happen again. So I think it varies because I had two very different demographics, and with that, it was definitely a postcode lottery with the services. So the first time I didn't have to ask help. The second time I did, but I had to kind of shout for it because it wasn't there. And then I decided to change a lot of the services anyway and put them in.
I think a large part of everything as well is how we feel and how we judge ourselves. So, you know, you can't help, I guess, especially now with social media as well, people you know that you follow that you have given birth the same time as you look at them and you kind of go, "Oh, well, they look so happy," or she's out, simple things like she's out for a walk. How is she out for a walk? I felt, third time, so I should know better, I fell into that trap of looking at someone out for a walk, looking lovely, and think, I'm going to do that. I had to stop because I thought my insides were going to come out. You know what I mean? Just shuffle back to the car, know your place, you're not ready. But it is that thing, we have to listen to ourselves, whether that's our mind or our bodies, because we have to go at a pace that suits us.
I mean, comparison is rife at the moment, isn't it? You know, there's so much that you can compare yourself to via social media and all of these other outlets. And that's why, yeah, as you're completely right, you need to kind of feel how strong you feel to be able to do all those things, but also try and find sources that are not necessarily media related. You know, look at NHS websites, look at NCT websites, look at all these other things which are more likely to give you an accurate view of what your life is actually going to look like and how you'll actually feel after. Because yeah, it's so easy to look at someone else and think, why am I not doing that? And I also think mum guilt, which is like a real thing. Mum guilt is such a huge thing, and it's kind of like a hashtag that's banded around, but I constantly feel bad that I'm not doing something that someone else is doing. And it's meant for me, I've ended up signing me and my baby up to about 5 million classes because, you know, one parent will say, "Oh, you're not doing sensory classes yet." And I'm like, sign up. "Oh, you haven't started swimming yet? Really, you should. Oh, sign up." And so I think it's important to take things at your own pace, and your child is not going to be harmed by you know, not signing up for swimming for another few months. Like, chill.
Yeah, doing things when you're ready. I can remember Tom coming back. He'd been away and he came back and he'd been reading the National Geographic or something, or watched something, and he was like, "There's this thing called the Neurological Pathway, and basically you need to do loads of things within the first year because the first year is so important because that's when all the paths are created." And I was like, okay. So I did the same thing. I signed up to 4 different classes, and literally not only did it mess up the routine that I had in terms of feeding, napping or anything, I would get there, feed him in the car because I'd be really worried about him being, you know, I want him just to be full and happy going into the class. Then I'd spend the whole time worrying about feeding if he wanted a top-up feed, because now I've just given, what was that feed? That wasn't a real feed. And then he would be crying and stuff. And then I'd think, oh no, am I going to have to get the dummy out of my bag? Because I said I wouldn't use a dummy, but now I am using a dummy because it turns out it's a pacifier and it actually helps him. But if I get a dummy out, then that lady over there is going to judge me. And it becomes this whole thing that probably everyone else has the same dialogue in their heads. And if you just got on with it, it actually wouldn't make a difference to anyone else's day, just yours.
And knowing the backstory would be so helpful, but we often don't. It is so easy to put on a bit of blusher and take a filtered selfie on your walk, but literally turn around 1 second later and make it look like you've been out for hours. And, you know, you might, at that baby class, you might say to one of the parents, you know, how's your baby sleeping? Never ask that question, nor do I fear, because you'll always get, and people's definition of sleeping through the night, all those kind of things, you know, one person will be like, yeah, they sleep through the night. They went from 10 till 6, or someone else will be like 11 till 7, whatever it is, you know, everyone's got different definitions, and what might be going on in the background for that person or how they are coping as well will be completely different. So yes, if we could just turn off comparison, that would be amazing. But again, it's more about finding things that make you feel good or make you feel supported. Some people love to read the stories of other people going through the same as them. Great. If you don't want to hear about other people struggling or other people, you know, coping with difficulties breastfeeding, don't follow those people or don't look for those kind of things. So yeah, curating what you're reading and what you're looking at and what you're talking about can really help you to feel like you're not alone. I
can remember in one baby group, that question came up of sleep. And I can remember watching one woman as she went, yeah, he got up every 40 minutes. And just thinking, yes, you're my people. Yeah. You right there. You represent, like, don't sit next to me if your baby is sleeping through. Like, but just seeing that, yeah, it just something that really stuck with me. And I remember seeing her about a year later and like telling her that. And she was like, oh my gosh, I even forgot that, you know, that he was like that we even went through that phase. Although recently we have been talking about how long is a phase? When is it no longer a phase and actually just a behavior? You know?
Just that sentence to me, like, it is a phase, it will pass, has got me through the first 4 months. So Harris is now 4 months old. And yes, that phrase has got me through everything. I don't even care how long the phase is, but it's a phase.
Mm-hmm.
But a phase shows there's an end to it, doesn't it? A phase shows that there's light at the end of the tunnel. If you say, how long's a piece of string? You think, oh, I'm going to be here forever. The toddler stage, you know, and the terrible 2s, and I'm on the 3s, and I'm thinking, nobody told me about the terrible 3s. You know, the terrible 2s is what I was told about. I was told by the time they were 3, actually, she's just sassy and stubborn, probably a bit like me. But, you know, knowing that it's a phase can just go, do you know what, this will end. There will be a light at the end of the tunnel. So, yeah, a phase is very much as long as your mind can make it a phase.
Yeah, so true. And I like the this too shall pass thing, which also means that you have to take hold of the good bits as well. Because just as much as you want the bad bits to kind of scoot on by, the lighter and more like enjoyable bits also do that. So you kind of got to soak. My main thing, that happens when we're out for a walk and everyone's just nice and peaceful. Me and Tom have to have a glance at each other in that moment, that split second, because it will go after that. But that's beautiful.
I spent ages, my baby wouldn't sleep on anything but me for the first 3 months. And that's obviously really normal as part of the 4th trimester. But I spent, you know, the first 3 months, you know, attempting to put him down. I don't know why I bothered. I should have just known. But, you know, you always just say, oh, maybe I'll try it this time. Maybe I'll try it. And then suddenly he then now is just getting to the phase where he feeds and then rolls over and just wants peace. And he just lies there like this. And I'm like, oh, no, need me. Need me. Want me. And so you're right. Like, I needed to I wish I could do the first 3 months again. I mean, that's probably a bit crazy, but I wish I could with this retrospective hat on and just soak it all up.
Yeah, I have to say that going through it the second time, I definitely was better at doing all of that. So
yeah.
I think I knew, the baby's not going to want to be put down. So why am I even going to try? The baby's going to cluster feed. That's totally normal. You know, he needs it for my milk supply. And you know what? It's lovely that I can just say, you know, I can't get off the sofa. I can't make dinner. I'm really sorry. You have to give me something that I can eat with one hand because that's all I can do. it is temporary, and like there is a nice side of it, I think, when you know, like you said, it's a phrase, it doesn't last forever. It can feel extremely overwhelming, especially the first time when you think that means you're doing something wrong, like cluster feeding must be, my milk supply is not enough, like my baby, I'm not doing what I need to for my baby, they can't sleep because I'm not settling them properly, they should be in their bed or whatever. When you know, just by benefit, I guess, of experience, is that you can just say like, okay, well, my older one's gone to bed and I get now 5 hours just with the baby, and aren't I lucky?
Spin it. That's a positive spin right there. That's a PR spin there. But there is that thing as well. I don't know about you, but I read all the books while I was pregnant, all the books about giving birth, about, you know, the routine and everything like that, and how to get your baby to sleep and what, you know. And I can remember realizing that Buzz hadn't read a single one, you know, and he didn't know what he was meant to be doing, what the textbook said. And I can remember turning to a male friend who was a dad at one point and going, what does this cry mean? Because I should know what this cry means, because the book tells me there are different cries and I don't know what they mean. But actually, I think for me, it came a point where you just suddenly go, that's all the advice and that's amazing. Pop it to one side and let me start listening to my child, not for the cries, because that was never a thing, but and just trying to gauge from him what's going on. And that did then have an impact on how I parented second time round and third time round. I remember with Buzz, the whole thing of putting him down to sleep, because you don't want a baby that won't be put down to sleep. That's what I kept reading, right? But then I got to like 11 months, I think he was. And I know it must have been younger than that, quite far in though. And a friend went to me, oh, you know, her baby had just dropped his nap. She was 2, and her nap. And she said, you know, it's such a shame she won't sleep on me anymore. I'm going to really miss those snuggles. And I was like, what? What? Is that a nice part of the day that I've not been doing? And then that day, I can remember just laying back with him in my arms, and it was absolutely glorious. Glorious. All right, so the washing up didn't get done. No washing was in the washing machine, whatever. But we forget to enjoy our children because we're trying to go, and I do this, and then I do this, and then I do this.
And you're constantly wishing for that next phase. I can't wait for him to talk. I can't wait for him to walk. Can't wait for when they go to school. I can't wait, you know, I've got a high schooler next year. And I just look back and think, oh my gosh, like I'm looking at my 3-year-old thinking, I don't remember my older one doing that. And actually it's with my third that I've been able to enjoy those things, because actually I've not wanted to push it, because I know how quickly it goes and how quickly it vanishes. And the washing up will always be there tomorrow. The washing up can be there when they go to bed at night, and you get that 5 minutes peace. Usually a biscuit and a tea does for me rather than the washing up, but it's always going to be there. But your children, they grow up so quickly. Enjoy it, because through the tantrums and through the chaos of motherhood, there are some lovely times that you need to enjoy.
On the washing and everything, I can remember the kindest bit of advice I got was actually from a lactation consultant, because I could, hey, Baba!
I'm so sorry, guys. Do you mind if I also feed whilst we do this?
I mean, it would be pretty bad if we're like, had my baby, you must not feed your child. Hello. Also, I've got to say, all the nap stuff, all the schedule, my babies, the first 2 only slept for half an hour. I could put a timer on and they'd be up. So where was my 2 hours a day to do all the things? I didn't have it.
Tilt you up so you don't see my boobs. 1 sec.
Killjoy.
I know. They're not that beautiful at the moment. They're just a saggy mess.
But I was saying earlier about the greatest bit of advice that a lactation consultant gave me, actually, because that's another thing that I beat myself up over, because I really wanted to breastfeed. No idea where that idea came into my head anyway, or why I put so much pressure on myself. But the lactation consultant didn't give the advice. Actually wasn't about breastfeeding. It was about so say every day we'd have a list of 20 things on our to-do list. She was like, just try and do one. And if you do that one thing, then amazing. Like, you've got to lower your expectations and realize that life has changed and your priorities now have shifted, and you need to just prioritize your baby and you, and who cares about the washing piling up?
The to-do list can be the source of all that pressure as well. I definitely, especially my second, was definitely one of those babies that did not read the books and then never slept for longer than 20 minutes, wouldn't go down, always had to be, you know, in a sling or whatever, for the fourth trimester. And it's normal for babies. They are so used to being in the womb where they hear that constant shushing and they're constantly rocking, and it's foreign to them to be out here in this world. And we can't expect them to suddenly go, okay, let's lie on a flat surface with absolutely nothing around you and go to sleep in silence when they're not used to that. But that having that to-do list every day and then just feeling this constant feeling of failure when it came to the end of the day and you haven't managed to get through it, I think it can be such a negative emotion that you carry through that fourth trimester. And I totally agree with that. Like, either don't make the list and just kind of work through things as they, because something becomes apparent when it's really like an urgent thing that jumps to the top of the list. So just do that thing when it's urgent.
When you've run out of knickers, now it's time to do the
laundry.
Nothing wrong with commando, girls. Nothing wrong.
I think just not having those, again, it's temporary. Again, it doesn't last for long, and they will sleep for longer stretches. And everyone that has ever had a baby will tell you that they do get over that. But having those lists and that pressure on you in that fourth trimester can just be so negative as well.
For me, a massive thing as well was that your shift of who you are. You know, one day you've got this lovely bump and you are you, and then the next day you're a shell of who you were, weirdly, even though motherhood is meant to make you. How does that work?
A lot of people feel like they lose their identity, but I think it's a matter of changing mind frame in a way. Like, rather than saying that I've lost a part of me that I used to enjoy, I think it's also about talking about things that you've gained. Yes, mister.
Is that me?
Yeah, he's like, oh, so yeah, thinking about all the things that you've gained. Like, for me, I felt this overwhelming sense of like love, where my kind of heart just opened a whole new like chamber that I hadn't even known about. And then that somehow kind of pushed away the fact that I'm not going to be able to shower for a week, or I'm not going to be able to go out and do things. And so I think sometimes it's about accepting that it's not going to be the same, but that the same doesn't necessarily mean bad.
When you were describing being left as a shell, it really reminded me of that feeling of like just after you've given birth and your bump goes from being this very like hard, lovely roundness to this squishy kind of
dough.
Yeah, dough, exactly. And I mean, that is a perfect example. You just like, what is this body? Where is this you know, I knew what my body was before I was pregnant. I knew what to expect when I was pregnant. And it is so hard to expect that this body is now completely different. And you've been left with this. And it will change over the course of the fourth trimester, and it will change over the coming year. But there is this kind of part of you that has to just let go of that initially, because it's just another thing to worry about and to feel is foreign to you.
There's a lot of foreignness, I think, in giving birth and becoming a mum. And I think it is that thing, I think kind of what you're saying, Zara, it's kind of taking away those expectations and actually seeing the moment for what it is and taking the joy from it as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's very easy to see the hard bits, because it is ruddy hard. I mean, don't get me wrong, like those sleepless nights, those poo explosions, all of those things, that they're hard. But then he makes a silly noise like that, and you just think, like, that's the joy. There it is. So it's just, you need to find the joy in those tiny little bits, and there are enough of those tiny little bits that it completely supersedes all the bad stuff.
Of course, because otherwise no one would ever go on to have subsequent children. You know what I mean?
True.
I think if it was all completely doom and gloom, why would we ever go, I know what we need in this situation that's dire, let's add another one.
I already said to my husband, I was like, I want another one now. And he's like, I don't think we should have another child. What
can new mums do for themselves in that in that fourth trimester to make sure that they are taking care of themselves and, well, yeah, ultimately looking after themselves really and putting themselves first. Because I liken it to the whole on a plane, face mask, life vest situation, that one, where, you know, you do have to fit your own before you can help anyone else. So from a medical point of view, Brooke, what would you say?
Well, you can definitely prepare for this phase in certain ways. So I would say preparing for those additional pressures and trying to offload whatever you can. So there is things like meal prep, I think, is fantastic, because again, trying to like make a meal on top of everything else. So meal prepping if you can, or the meal box, and all of those other ways that there are to kind of make that task less difficult and onerous.
On that one, I've got to say that I was batch cooking before giving birth to Buzz. I burnt a chili con carne. I still tubbed it up. We just ate the black bits as well. It was fine.
In those moments, you are so grateful for something that is not just the biscuit or just the cracker or a dry piece of toast. You will be grateful. It doesn't matter what the meal looks like. You will be grateful for it when you need it. So freeze it anyway. I totally agree. So I guess the tasks that you can offload or you can prepare for, definitely do that. Support wherever possible. Again, partners, mums, sisters, knowing who you can speak to if you need the extra kind of medical support. So what I would say is your first point of call when you come out is going to be your midwife. So a midwife will visit you at home, usually the day after you leave hospital. So it doesn't matter what day of birth you're at, they'll usually visit you the day after you leave. You'll have a health visitor as well. They visit you around day 10, and then you visit again at 6 weeks. So you've got your midwife, your health visitor, you've got your GP. You can also call up the ward you gave birth on, if you or the ward that you left, the postnatal ward as well, especially if you don't know who to turn to or who to speak to, and they'll usually be able to advise you, because sometimes you can come back into the day units or the triage of your hospitals as well, the maternity units, if it's a specific pregnancy concern you have. But if you can just have a list of those, have a list of it on your phone. If you're planning to breastfeed or you want to breastfeed, have a list on your phone of the numbers of the support you can turn to. So the hospitals will also be able to put you in touch with breastfeeding support. So available on the NHS, there is breastfeeding support available, but also lactation consultants, and you can again look after and have some numbers saved of those. Ask around if you've got friends that have those kind of things. Then I think just being prepared with those, so you know who to call if you need to, and you just
that's really good, isn't it? Like preempting stuff so that when you're in that moment and you aren't in a place to kind of be able to do that research that easily, knowing I did this, I prepped for this, let's get that number, let's see if they can help.
Yeah, exactly. Like my second had tongue tie, and I'm not just talking like a little tongue tie. He had a huge tongue tie that myself and the midwife saw as soon as he came out, and so I was absolutely intending to breastfeed, but every latch was excruciating because he had this big thing at the front of his tongue. So I knew I needed to get his tongue tie cut. And in a lot of places with the NHS, although you can get the tongue tie cut on the NHS, it's often a few weeks wait, and I knew I wouldn't be able to breastfeed successfully. So I had I had some lactation consultants to call and tongue tie practitioners to be able to cut that. So again, there's kind of NHS and private options for things if you need to, and sometimes these things you just need it more urgently. But I felt so low in those early days when it was painful and I just needed to get it sorted, that knowing I had those numbers to turn to, just as soon as I even made the call for the appointment, I felt better about that I would be able to carry on breastfeeding and things like that.
Well, that's a huge part. Danny, do you find that when people come to Pandas that sometimes it's in the knowing that you're not on your own and in the asking for help that some of it almost lifts? It's kind of that accepting of how you're feeling.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of the things is, so I'm the support group manager, so I look after all the group leaders in the within the UK. And one of the things that I say in a lot of my training to the group leaders is, if somebody comes once or rings or makes an email, makes contact and then doesn't arrive, don't take it personally. There's a few reasons for that. One, you might not be the right support at the time that they need. They might need something different. Or two, just knowing you're there is actually enough, and just knowing that there's somebody that they can talk to when they need to. And sometimes that's enough to say, well, actually, it's not just me. If this thing exists, it's because I'm not the only one. And I think that was one of the things about when I with my first two children, is the first time I had such an amazing experience because all the support was there. Health visitor was there, the GP, the midwife, everybody ran around me, the ward accepted me, you know, things like that. And then I came to my second and there was nothing. And actually trying to find that, the dauntingness of having to look on the internet to search for that when I was already in the pits of despair, is truly anxious as well as hard. And I think for me, when now I train new leaders that come on, I say, do that search for them. So once I was well and I started up my own group for Pandits and I started getting involved in my MVP, which wasn't MVP back then, and things like that, I actively searched for 2 or 3 weeks to get all the information of all the different mental health supports. And then I put on 2 events which got professionals involved, and it got, you know, just so that mums in that point didn't have to do that. And now I've passed that on to my group leaders so that if anybody comes, even if they don't want to accept the support in the group, they can hand the leaflet over or they can email the PDF and say, well, actually, this is all the mental health support in your area. Don't, you know, ignore the fact that you are going to need a GP or your health visitor, but actually, if you just want some other things, this is what is available. And then you can come back to us when you're feeling more well in yourself and actually talk about it, because talking therapies are great, but peer support isn't always what people need when they're absolutely in it, and they need more medical professional support. And we are there as just a listening ear. We can't give medical advice. We can't give anybody who's feeling suicidal the ways out of that, apart from passing them on to people, and you know, we're actively safeguarding them. But yeah, just knowing that we're there is more than enough for some people. And for those that need to just listen and chat and be there, then talking about, a lot of the time we don't even talk about the postnatal depression, we don't talk about the anxiety, we actually talk about the weather and other things, because actually you don't need to talk about it. What they just need is to know that you're also going through something similar, and actually you can talk about anything else as well.
Yeah, I don't, for me, the reason why Happy Mum Happy Baby exists and why we keep pushing forward is that big old statistic of the leading cause of death in new mums in the first year is suicide. And that, for me, it just blows me. This time that we're told is meant to be the happiest time, and if we don't talk and tell people how overwhelming it can be, and that you're okay, talk about it, don't feel ashamed of whatever feelings you're feeling, just talk. You know, I just think talking is so easy, and we should make sure that everyone knows that they're able to. Sarah, how has COVID impacted how and where we can access support? Because I know you've got support. You're in the just out of the fourth trimester. You're in the COVID times of the newborn. So how easy is it to get support, even though we're in COVID times?
Well, I think you need to remember that even though, so antenatal classes are still going on, but they're going on via Zoom rather than necessarily face-to-face. So you've still got the antenatal support. And I've found the group of girls and guys and, you know, partners that I met through my one, they've given me so much support, actually. So we meet up for a little socially distanced walk every week, and we just chat all of the horrors, get it out of our system, talk about the sleep, the poo, the everything, really. And I think it's really important that people know that those things are still going on, so you can still get that kind of peer support group. And health visitors, even if they aren't able to come to your house physically, they are still doing video conferencing calls. So I had all of my health visitor calls via video, and they can kind of see things in the background. So they can see a little sleepy head in the back, and they'd be like, oh, are you using that for sleep? Or, you know, do that standard chat. So they can still kind of have a look round, and so they can still gauge you know, a certain amount from you. Of course, ideally it would be great to have that in person, but there is still a lot you can get from these kind of meetings. And all of the kind of lactation consultants, everyone that kind of Brooke has mentioned, they're all available remotely. So don't feel like you're disattached from anyone. You just need to call, and ultimately, once they've triaged you through these systems on video links and on telephones. If you need to be seen, you will be seen, you know, as same as with your GP. If you need to be seen, you must be seen. So if you're feeling low and you think, oh, but they're only going to speak to me on a video, don't worry. If you need to be seen, I promise you, go in, speak to them, because they will chat to you. And there are lots of things that you need to do face to face that you can't always do on video, but it's kind of a bit more of a triage than it is anything else now.
I wonder if having it over video, so that you've not got to leave your house, you've not got to, you know, you're not going to, I think that in itself, leaving the house is a big deal. I wonder if actually that's a bit of a comfort to some people, knowing that it is, that in a way a little bit easier because it's all on this.
Oh,
I think
100%.
Yeah, 100%. From a Panda's point of view, we've always done face-to-face contact. We've always had a helpline, and we've always had emails and social media. But actually, those virtual ways have massively increased during COVID. We've had to stop the support groups. We know we're starting to reopen again soon, hopefully. Now the guidelines keep changing. But actually, just having that anonymity sometimes of being able to email and not having that face of somebody judging you, even though we know we're not judging, you're always going to be thinking that somebody's judging you for what you're saying. And I think sometimes in an email or on the phone where you can't be seen actually gives that look of, well, you actually don't know who I am, so I can talk to you without that without that judgment. And actually I think that's been a big thing. We've changed our timing as well during lockdown. Obviously you've always got your kids around, you've always got your husband or your partner, and sometimes that's really difficult to want to have that 5 minutes piece to be able to pick up the phone. But actually, how many people sit there with the phones, or, you know, even if they're feeding the baby, then they can send an email, or they're going to be a part of the closed Facebook and things like that. So I think it's really good for virtually, and I don't think we'll go back from that in full, because actually I think it opens up a new side of things where the anxiety is less for trying to get out of the house. You know, when you've got a new baby and you're looking and you think, right, okay, it takes you 3 hours, you know, there's not that up and go, let's go. You've got this to pack, you've got that to pack, have I got enough nappies? And my boob's going to leak, have I got enough pads? You know,
and you always forget something, no matter how prepared you are.
You do.
We've had to, me and Tom have had it before, where we've had to trade with another mum because we had the nappies, but she had the wipes, and we didn't have so we had to trade. That's good.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, a bit of wheeling and dealing in the baby changing.
This definitely happened. I definitely benefited from this. I had our 1 year health visitor review via Zoom as well, and I have a toddler or a two-year-old, and the idea of getting them both out to get on time to this appointment is quite an overwhelming task in itself. Yeah. And I could just have her watching Peppa Pig in the background while he was pottering about, and she could observe him. It's not ideal, but I think it is there, and like you said, I think there is definitely going to be a role moving forward of virtual services in everything. I think in maternity, in basically all of medicine. Hopefully some of the good we can take forward.
Yeah, I think it is that thing. I think there's so much good from it, but if you need to see a doctor, if you need to be face to face with people, you will definitely get that as well.
I had a lot of messages from people, especially kind of during or just after lockdown, people worrying they were slipping through the cracks, because there was quite a lot of chopping and changing with how systems were working, especially in maternity and kind of postnatal care, and people did definitely fall through the cracks. I think hopefully things are settling out now anyway, but in the meantime, and I hate to put the onus back onto parents, but I think, as we've kind of said already, is it, if you need something, speak up, and if you need to, just call someone, and the chances are your GP can direct you back to the maternity unit if you called the wrong place or whatever. It doesn't matter, just call, whether it's your midwife or health visitor, calling someone and they can direct you, and just make sure, don't just wait, because I think a few people don't want to bother the services, or I'm sure my midwife will get to me, and maybe she's not going to come today, but maybe she'll come next week, and they just wait and wait. But actually, if you didn't get your midwife visit when you were supposed to get your midwife visit, call the postnatal ward and just say, and make sure you're on someone's list, and don't be afraid of it.
If you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice to deal with the first time you had to go through the fourth trimester, what would you say to yourself? Because I always think it's important that you give yourself advice rather than giving advice to other people. Everyone gives everyone advice, but what would you say to yourself?
I guess coming back to kind of something we said earlier, but which is take the pressure off. Stop trying. I kind of, the first time around especially, I kind of thrived off anyone that told me like, you're looking so good, you're doing really well done, you know. And I was like, oh yes, okay, great, someone thinks I look good. Like, that stuff does not matter. Don't think about what other people's perceptions of you. Let go of all of that. Just focus on bonding with your baby, your relationship with your partner that's there, and just kind of freeing yourself of those outside pressures and comments, and anyone saying, oh yeah, you should put the baby here, or you'll work it out. You know, as long as you're, you know, feeding the baby, changing the baby, putting them to sleep every so often, you know, you're not going to do anything wrong, and the rest of it will fall into place. And I think, yeah, let go of the outside pressures, I think would have helped me, definitely.
That's so interesting, because actually third time round for me, it was someone saying to me, you're the happiest person on the internet, that made me internally go, I am screaming inside, and that is not me. And actually that for me kind of made me sort of unravel and kind of go, no. So it's really interesting, kind of blocking out even the good that people are saying, and realizing actually it doesn't really mean anything. It just means that I brushed my hair today, so that's it.
I found myself going into this cycle of then trying to do more things that would make other people say like, oh, that's so great, and going for these ridiculous long walks again that like I wasn't ready to do, because then someone would say, oh, I couldn't leave the house for a week, you've done so well, you got out. And I was kind of going down this cycle.
Yeah.
I think actually forget about that. Just do whatever feels right, and just focusing on more on that relationship with the baby rather than what anyone else would think.
Yeah. Danny, one piece of advice for yourself?
I think it's very much kind of mirroring what Brooke said. And actually for the first 2 weeks, instead of letting people in, just shutting the doors, and just enjoying my unit and my new unit. You know, I had people rocking up the night I was released from hospital and things like that. And it was all great, but actually, no, I needed time for me and to understand, because you've just become a mum. It's the newest thing. It's the scariest thing. You've no idea what to do. Everyone's winging it, and that's okay. But actually just saying, do you know what? I love you all, but this is my unit and this is what I need to get used to. I need to get my routines, because I think routines are huge, and I've learned that through all three of them. So yeah, just being able to bond and get that routine, I think, by shutting the doors.
Sarah?
I think for me, it's about, I spent a lot of time and money investing in things that mimicked me. So, you know, a heart monitor, or something that created the white noise that would be in my body, or something that would rock the baby or sling the baby. And actually, all my baby really needed was me. That's all it needed. And I spent all this time trying to put it down and mimic me. I should have just embraced this baby 24/7 if that's what it needed, and just used me. And I think women forget, or, you know, parents forget, that all their baby needs is you, and all this external stuff isn't necessary.
It's stuff. It's literally stuff. Ladies, I can't thank you enough for coming along and joining me with this chat. I think it's such an important area that we just simply don't talk about. But hopefully us talking about it and having other people listen to it will be a big help. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this, then there are loads more exclusive videos from the Happy Mum, Happy Baby virtual meetup for you to enjoy and watch. Just head to happymumhappybaby.com to find out more.